You won't take me! Leave me alone, though! I won't go back to that day!
Tracy Edwards stumbled out of that apartment building with a handcuff dangling from his wrist. It was on the night of July 22, 1991. Oxford Apartments. 924, North 25th Street. Milwaukee, Wisconsin. To the neighbors, apartment 213 smelled like something had gone wrong with the plumbing. They complained. The building manager made calls. Nobody came. This is not a story about a monster. It is a story about a quiet boy from Ohio, who became one. Stay with me, because what the police discovered inside apartment 213 would become one of the most horrifying crime scenes in American history. And if you enjoy deep, real crime stories like this, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Quiet Monsters. Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer was born on May 21, 1960, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He was, by all accounts, a normal child. Cheerful. Curious. Energetic. His father, Lionel Dahmer, was a chemistry student. His mother, Joyce, was prone to anxiety, and as Jeffrey grew older, their marriage would begin to fracture under the weight of her mental illness and his long absences. But the first crack in Jeffrey's story didn't come from his parents' fights. It came from something seemingly small. At 4 years old, Jeffrey underwent a double hernia surgery. His parents later recalled that something changed in him afterward. He became withdrawn. Quieter. As if some small light inside him had dimmed. Whether it was the trauma of the surgery, the anesthesia, or simply the age at which things began to go wrong, nobody can say for certain. What we do know is this: by the time Jeffrey was a teenager, he had developed an obsession that would come to define him. As a boy, Dahmer became fascinated by animal bones. He collected roadkill. He dissected animals in the woods behind his house. His father, a chemist, taught him how to strip and preserve the bones using bleach and chemicals. Lionel Dahmer would later write that he thought his son's curiosity was simply scientific. Normal, even. But Jeffrey wasn't studying. He was feeling something. Something that frightened him, even then. By high school, Dahmer was already drinking. He smuggled liquor into class, hiding it in a paper bag. He later described it as the only thing that quieted the thoughts in his head. His parents' marriage finally collapsed in 1977. His mother left, taking his younger brother David with her. His father moved out shortly after. For a brief chilling window, Jeffrey Dahmer lived alone. He was 17 years old. And in that empty house, in the summer of 1978, Jeffrey Dahmer committed his first murder. June 18, 1978. Stephen Mark Hicks was hitchhiking to a rock concert. He was 18 years old, tan and smiling, with his whole life ahead of him. Jeffrey Dahmer pulled over. He offered a ride. He offered beer. Stephen got in the car. They went back to the empty Dahmer house. They drank. They talked. And when Stephen said he wanted to leave, Jeffrey didn't want him to go. He struck Stephen Hicks in the back of the head with a barbell. Then he strangled him. Afterwards, Dahmer dissected the body. He used techniques he'd learned as a boy, from his own father. He stripped the bones, dissolved the flesh, and scattered the remains in the woods behind the house. Years later, he would describe the feeling with a clarity that chilled investigators to their core. He said he simply didn't want Stephen to leave. For the next 9 years, Jeffrey Dahmer did not kill again. But the hunger never left. Investigators and criminologists who later studied his case noted that those dormant years were not quiet ones inside his mind. The fantasies intensified. The alcohol deepened. He was, in the language of behavioral science, rehearsing, building the psychological architecture of what was to come, even as he held jobs, moved cities, and lived, to all outward appearances, like anyone else. The silence between the first murder and the second was not peace. It was pressure building. Dahmer enrolled at Ohio State University after high school. He dropped out after one semester, too much drinking, not enough structure. His father, desperate, enrolled him in the army. Jeffrey served for 3 years, stationed in Germany. He was discharged early for alcohol abuse. He drifted. He moved to Miami. He moved back to Ohio. He moved in with his grandmother in West Allis, Wisconsin. He worked at a blood plasma center. He worked at a chocolate factory, the Ambrosia Chocolate Company in Milwaukee. He seemed unremarkable. Quiet. Polite, even. In 1982, Dahmer was arrested for indecent exposure at a state fair. In 1986, he was convicted of lewd and lascivious behavior for exposing himself to 2 young boys. He was sentenced to probation. Court-ordered therapy. He told his probation officer he was making progress. He was lying. Because in November of 1987, in a hotel room in Milwaukee, Jeffrey Dahmer killed again. His second victim was Stephen Twomey, a 26-year-old man he met at a gay bar called Club 219. Dahmer claims he has no memory of killing Twomey, that he woke up beside the body and panicked. Whether this is true, it's impossible to know. What is true is what happened next. Dahmer bought a large suitcase, put the body inside, took a cab back to his grandmother's house, and dismembered the remains in the basement. The killing had entered a new phase. Over the next year, he would kill 3 more men. In May of 1990, Jeffrey Dahmer moved into apartment 213 at the Oxford Apartments on North 25th Street in Milwaukee. He was 30 years old. He was working the night shift at the Ambrosia Chocolate Factory. And he was about to begin the most horrifying chapter of his story. The pattern was always the same. Dahmer would go to gay bars, bathhouses, or shopping malls. He targeted black men, Asian men, and Latino men. This was not incidental. His victim's race would later become central to one of the most troubling aspects of the entire case, because when warning signs appeared, when neighbors called, when a young boy stumbled into the street, the response from authorities was consistently inadequate. Whether that inadequacy was rooted in racism, in homophobia, or in the institutional failures of a department already under scrutiny, the outcome was the same: the men and boys Dahmer targeted were not protected. They were not believed. They were not looked for with urgency. He would offer money. He would offer drinks. He would invite them back to his apartment to pose for photos or watch movies. Once there, he would drug their drinks, using sleeping pills crushed into coffee or alcohol. And then he would kill them. When police finally entered apartment 213 in July 1991, they found evidence of atrocities that left seasoned detectives unable to sleep for months. In the refrigerator, human remains. In a filing cabinet, 3 human skulls. In a 57-gallon drum, the dissolved remains of 3 bodies. On a shelf, 2 human skulls, cleaned and preserved. In photographs, documentation of what Dahmer had done. He had killed 17 men and boys in total. 14 of them in this apartment. In May of 1991, 14-year-old Konorak Sinthasumphone escaped from apartment 213, drugged, disoriented, and partially undressed, and wandered into the street. Neighbors called 911. 2 officers responded. Dahmer told police Konorak was his adult boyfriend. That they had been drinking. That this was a lover's quarrel. The officers walked Konorak back to the apartment. They left. Konorak Sinthasumphone was 14 years old. He was killed that night. The 2 officers were later fired. A civil lawsuit was settled. No amount of accountability could undo what happened in the hours that followed. Tracy Edwards had managed to stay calm for 5 hours inside apartment 213. Dahmer had been acting erratically. He had a large knife. He pressed his head against Tracy's chest and listened to his heartbeat. He told Tracy he was going to eat his heart. Tracy Edwards waited for his moment. He punched Dahmer in the face, ran for the door, and fled into the street. When Milwaukee police officers Robert Roth and Rolf Mueller encountered him with a handcuff on his wrist, he led them back to apartment 213. Jeffrey Dahmer was arrested without incident. He was calm. He was cooperative. He confessed to everything. Jeffrey Dahmer was charged with 15 counts of murder in Wisconsin. The state had no death penalty. His defense team entered a plea of guilty but insane. They argued Dahmer suffered from a necrophilia disorder so severe that he was unable to control his actions. The prosecution countered that Dahmer was methodical, controlled, and fully aware of what he was doing. Forensic testimony established that he had drugged victims with specific quantities of sleeping pills, carefully calibrated doses that incapacitated without killing too quickly. He maintained a job, paid rent, and managed relationships with neighbors and co-workers for years while committing murders feet away from where ordinary life continued. That level of operational control, prosecutors argued, was not the behavior of a man who had lost his grip on reality. It was the behavior of a man who had chosen to hide. The jury deliberated for 5 hours. They found Jeffrey Dahmer sane. He was sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms, 957 years in prison. When given the opportunity to address the court, Dahmer spoke for several minutes. He expressed remorse. He said he wished he could give the families their lives back. He said he knew that was impossible. Observers noted that he seemed, genuinely, to mean it. Whether that mattered, was something each family had to decide for themselves. Jeffrey Dahmer served 2 years of his sentence at the Columbia Correctional Institution in Portage, Wisconsin. In prison, he reportedly became a born-again Christian. He was baptized. He read the Bible. He asked to be segregated from other prisoners for his own safety. For a time, that protection was granted. On November 28, 1994, it was not. Dahmer was assigned to a work detail with 2 other inmates. One of them, Christopher Carver, a man serving time for murder, attacked Dahmer with a metal bar from the prison gym. Jeffrey Dahmer died later that morning from severe head trauma. He was 34 years old. Christopher Carver later said that Dahmer had shown no remorse around other inmates, that he taunted people with what he had done. Whether those accounts are accurate, or whether they grew in the retelling, is something historians and psychologists still debate. Before we close, we want to say their names. Not his name. Theirs. Stephen Hicks. Stephen Twomey. James Dockstader. Richard Guerrero. Anthony Sears. Raymond Smith. Edward Smith. Ernest Miller. David Thomas. Curtis Strader. Errol Lindsay. Anthony Hughes. Conorak Synthesumphone. Matt Turner. Jeremiah Weinberger. Oliver Lacey. Joseph Braidhoft. 17 human beings. 17 lives that mattered. 17 families that never fully healed. What do we do with a story like Jeffrey Dahmer's? The easy answer is to call him a monster, to place him outside the boundaries of humanity, somewhere we never have to look too closely. But the harder truth is that Jeffrey Dahmer grew up in an ordinary house, on an ordinary street, in ordinary America. He had a father who tried. A school that noticed. A military that discharged him. A court system that put him on probation, twice, before he killed again and again and again. The question isn't just, what made him? The question is, what did we miss? A teenager left alone in an empty house. A soldier discharged for alcoholism and sent home without treatment. A man convicted of exposing himself to children, handed probation and a phone number for a therapist. And a 14-year-old boy, stumbling toward help, handed back. How many times, right now, are we missing it again? What do you think about this case? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy true crime stories like this, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, see you in the next one.